So before we get started, I want to just state the obvious that I am not a ZipForms instructor. This is just trial and error stuff that I've figured out. So as we're going through, if you guys know something, a shortcut, or see something that's useful to the group, please share the information. I think it'd be a lot better if we're all collaborating rather than you guys just listening to me chit-chat. So with that being said, I'm curious, how long does it take for you guys to write an offer? If a buyer comes to you and says they want to write an offer, how long does it take? Mary Lou? Too long. Is that? How long does it take?
15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Yeah, if you have everything, the pre-approval letter and all the specs, everything, yeah.
So in ZipForms, it takes you about 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other input?
I used to be able to copy and from I can't do that anymore.
Okay. How long does it take if a buyer comes to you and says, I want to write an offer? Like, what's long? An hour?
Because I have to read it over and over because I'm ADD. I might miss something.
Okay. Concerned about missing stuff.
Yeah.
Perfect. So Mary Lou, what's long?
I'm scary. It's like I keep going back and forth and then finding old ones that have to be replaced. And
Okay.
I just need it.
Okay. So do you use templates?
No, I just kind of know what.
You just know it well enough to fill in the blanks. Do you put your name in every time you write an offer?
I do autopilot. Like you scroll down and it auto-populates for me.
Okay. So my goal with talking through this today is to shorten. So your 15 minutes is probably going to go down to 10. And Danny, you're not going to have to, for some of the stuff, go back and reread it. Okay, so that's my sales pitch. That's why you're going to stick around for the whole thing. All right.
That was okay.
So starting at the beginning, logging into, sorry I didn't do this before you guys got here, into ZipForms. And you guys know that when it comes to templates, our company set up templates. Anybody use those templates? Do you use them?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do.
Personally, I had my own templates before they started that. So the first time I ever looked at the templates the company set up was last night.
Well, then I don't think I even know that.
Okay.
I never saw that.
So why did it take me there? Let's go to the dashboard. Okay. So this is my ZipForm account. If someone is going to write an offer, you're going to go to transactions, right? You're going to create a new transaction. So let's say new purchase, and you're going to name it. I just name it the name of the street, residential, and then down here for me, you see this automatic template that popped up? That's one that I personally set up, but I can select anything out of here. You with me so far?
Yeah.
So the top ones are templates I created, and then there's all these that the company has.
Can we use companies? The mail is okay.
I'm sorry?
Can we use companies? Templates?
Absolutely, and I think companies are a great place to start. The
Okay.
problem with the companies is that it's the same template for 3,500 agents.
Okay.
So it's not yours.
Right, exactly. That's true.
They're not specific. So, okay, we got that. Let me cancel this. Now that you guys understand that part of it. Has anybody clicked on this place over here? Templates. So, what I've done is I have a template when I take a listing. I have a template when I work with a buyer. This just happened to be a street where I had multiple properties that were owned by the same person, so I just made a template. And then this is if you have a buyer. You know, condos are different than houses. But let's do a new template. And slow me down if you need me to slow down. I'm going to create a brand new template as if we never did. And this is something that you guys can kind of follow along. And let's call it, I'll just call it buyer one because I already have one called buyer. Residential. And for this template, let's add the BHHS Orange County residential purchase. Oh, sorry, did I go too fast?
Yeah.
I can't, I'm having a hard time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, where,
I think I can, let me see if I can go back.
Are we to select automatically use this or not automatically?
I don't have any template.
Hold on a second, let me go back.
it would be Orange County, right?
I'm gonna go slower. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna start over again and go slower.
Yeah, is it listing or mine?
Okay, so we're in templates, and we're gonna start a new template, and from there we can choose if it's a listing, a purchase, a lease, or a lease listing. And since we're calling this one a buyer, and we'll do one for a buyer and we'll do one for a seller, and we'll kind of repeat the process. So we'll do it twice, but for different purposes. But I think it's good to follow along. So first one we're going to do is new purchase or offer. And you should get this template information. Remember, this is a template, it's not a transaction. So you call it buyer, call it offer, call it whatever you want to make sense out of it. Under property type, I sell residential real estate. I don't sell industrial, multi-unit, sometimes condos. We can set one up for a condo, commercial, but it's for me, it's always residential.
So the auto applies, which one do you choose?
So I choose do not automatically apply this template to new transactions. If you want to select it yourself. Now, if you want to do every time you do a purchase or a residential transaction, you can click that button.
What's the pros and cons?
So the benefit of clicking this button, automatically apply this template to purchase residential, is that when you start a new transaction, if you tell the system that it's a buyer, a residential buyer, you don't have to go and select it, it'll do it automatically. It is. Now, I think if I click this button, it's probably going to confuse the system because I already have a template set up. I don't know if I can move this page. It won't let me move it. But I already have a buyer template in my zip forms that automatically applies when I do a buyer. So you guys click that button. I'll click it.
Which
See what
one?
happens. Worst case is it crashes. So we have a buyer, and then you have two choices at this stage. You can start from scratch and upload all your own documents, or you can take one of the company templates to get started. And I think that it is wise. I would do the residential Orange County. You with me so far?
Yeah.
You ready for me to, everybody ready for me to click save?
Residential.
Any no's? Silence is affirming. Thank you. Okay. So we just saved a new template. I do not want to create a new transaction. I want to modify this template. So all we have right here is the template that the company set up for us. If we stopped here, there's no sense in even doing this other than it auto applies to a transaction because all this is what the company's put together for us. Everybody follow that? So now let's personalize this. And for me, because I don't like the arrangement of how this stuff is set up.
I agree.
So let's move it around. Let's organize the documents. I want the purchase agreement.
Oh, that's cool.
Let's put it there. Now for me, cover sheet should be at the top. So cover sheet, let's look at this order. Wire fraud, let's have the buyer sign the wire fraud before the offer. So affiliated business wire fraud offer.
Disclosure regarding agency.
It's in the purchase agreement.
Okay,
It's part of the one that I'm highlighted on right now.
okay.
Local area. Do we have buyers sign the statewide buyer and seller advisory, or do we just get that signed when the seller delivers it to us.
Seller's gonna give it to you anyway.
So I personally don't have the buyer sign this. When the buyer makes an offer, I deliver it to them with the disclosures from the seller. So let's get rid of it. Agent visual inspection, that's important. Lead-based paint, seller's going to give us that. That's not something we're going to give to them now. Same with the market condition advisory. That one, you might want it in there. No? Okay, let's get rid of it. What about the buyer inspection advisory? Isn't that in the RPA?
It is.
So let's see. So if it's in the RPA, why do we need another copy?
Wire fraud is in the RPA
Yeah.
also.
You know what though? That's different. Actually, wait a minute. I think you just pointed out made a good point. The wire fraud right here is not the company wire fraud. It's the CAR wire fraud. We'll check that in a minute because we're still organizing. So if we just go through, why did the cover show up down there again? This happens to me sometimes. Does this happen to anybody else where you try to organize and it won't take?
Yes.
I usually do it when it's a grid versus a list.
Oh.
It's easier to move around.
Okay, let me see. See, it didn't. Yeah, that's funny. No, I'm curious. If I go, one time I went back and then I went back in and it did take. No, it doesn't take. So how do I change it to a grid?
On the right, next to organize.
Oh, here?
Yep.
Okay. So let's, oops,
So if you go up and then
organize.
yep.
When I selected buyer template, it looks to me like it chose a listing that came up because I don't have the offer. It said I have a listing.
That's because you got to scroll down further to the bio.
Let me finish this and then we'll help figure that out. So cover sheet, affiliated business, wire fraud. Let me just say done organizing and check something. See if it's saved. Okay. Now I'm curious. This wire fraud. Oh, this is the BHHS wire fraud. So the reason why is there's two wire frauds that we should always get signed. One of them is accompanied with the offer, and the other one is one that our company wants us to use. So this is a company disclosure, the affiliated business. This is the company disclosure, the wire fraud, local area, offer. Again, I want to move these. I want that to be there. Does everybody get the local area signed when they get the offer signed?
All supposed to.
Does anybody have the buyer pay a commission?
What was that?
Ruda, any input? If you're going to have the buyer pay a commission, pay for the flat commission and the TC fee and all that stuff, you better get it signed when you get the offer signed, in my opinion. If you're paying it yourself, then then go ahead and I'm not legal advice, but I don't think it's quite as important. So when I set up a template, I want it to kind of have a flow. So cover sheets where I input all the information. These are company disclosures that get signed before the offer gets signed. Here's where you get the offer signed. The next form, in this case, for Liz, would be a counteroffer form, assuming you get a counter. Okay, then once you get an executed contract, well, what about, so if you want the local area, that's something that you're going to need to generate. Everything else either gets signed with the offer or comes from the seller, right?
Where's that third one? I can't see.
Third, this here,
Yeah.
it says wire fraud warning to consumer.
Okay. And then buyer counter offer and local disclosure after that.
Yeah, and you can move them around, put them in any order that you want. For me, things like contingency for sale of buyer's property, oftentimes that, in my business, that never gets used. Most transactions, I don't use that, so I'll put it at the end. I have no idea why the arbitration agreement is in here.
That's a list that was on his
Yeah.
list.
Yeah, we should just do
Ours
that.
requires
She's right.
that.
We have to, it's required now.
But it's in the contract.
No.
No, it
it's
wasn't.
extra
It wasn't my-
HH.
It wasn't
That's
David.
required.
Wait,
All
try to talk one person at a time. Who can explain to me why this is in with a purchase?
It's supposed to be with purchase.
The last meeting we just had,
Yeah.
he had that as a required document now, as on the list besides whatever's in the contract.
As far as I remember, the last meeting we had was in relation to listing agreements and lease agreements.
Oh, so you're saying in the purchase.
We're working on a purchase right now.
Okay, I could.
So why is the arbitration in a purchase? Is the company asking us to get an arbitration agreement signed with the buyer? Between us and the buyer? I don't know the answer to that. But I've never had a buyer. I've never used this form with a buyer. I use it with every single seller, but we're talking about a buyer right now. So for me, again, we can take it out. So things like seller in possession, residential lease after sale, RCSD. Oh shoot, I deleted the wrong one. It's okay. Don't delete the wrong ones. But these are things that I am going to use in every transaction. The local area, the my visual inspection, a request for repair, contingency removal, verification of property condition, receipt for reports. Cool? So we're good?
Just take a picture.
Sure. Actually, I think it's on video too.
Oh, it is.
Which video?
So, and I think there's a couple. So we just deleted the stuff we're not going to use.
Would you read the
Which video?
Yeah.
Who's talking?
Cover sheet. Affiliated business arrangement. Wire fraud. RPA. Local area. Buyer counter. AVID. Request for repair. Contingency removal. Verification of property condition. We should probably move the receipt for reports up here. Did you guys get the receipt for reports signed? Anybody use that form? Okay, so I think it should be up a little bit further in the process because the verification of property condition is kind of like the last thing, right? And then the final three things are if needed. So I want to show you one other thing because in my opinion, I think we need more than what the company template had. So now let's add some stuff that they don't have in here. Like how about a counter number 2? And how about, what was the form that I deleted?
Arbitration.
What did I accidentally delete when I meant to delete the arbitration? It was an as-needed form, like seller in possession, maybe? I don't remember.
Maybe add an addendum 1.
Sure.
So just
Yeah, that's a good idea. We almost always use an addendum.
For repair list.
Mm-hmm. And then one other thing that they didn't add is you guys have to give the 48-page earthquake booklet to the buyer.
Yeah.
So let's add that. And then let's also add the signature page so that the buyer, and by the way, the seller's probably going to give you that.
Right.
But if you want to be really diligent and you want to give the earthquake book to the buyer, you can do that yourself. And then, let's see. Anybody ever sell a house in LA County?
Yes.
So why don't we add that local area too? That way you don't have to have a different template. You just pick the one you want. You can have stuff in the template and never use it. And it's easier if you just have one, I think. As a buyer's agent, is anybody using the square footage and lot advisory form? Well, let's put that in there too.
Aren't we required
Mm-hmm. Anything else that we want to add? So now all those showed up down here. So now let's organize them.
David, I have a question.
Yeah.
So if they have trust, we have to just add the trust advisory too here.
Oh, that's a good point. We should add the trust advisory. Let me click this button. Yeah, the TA. Good point. Because they have the RCSD, but they don't have the TA.
What about LLC?
LLC. Do you mean the representative capacity? That's already in there.
Is there?
That they do have right here. Representative capacity signature page.
That was there.
So everybody, professionals is, oh yeah. Keep in mind, I just want to teach you how to do this. Don't, in my opinion, it's more valuable for you to learn how to do it and then go do it yourself than it is for you to copy it the exact way I'm doing it.
Could you
'Cause-
just mention those again that you just added? Because I can't see it.
Yeah, I went through and I added all the forms that I use or you use in your transaction. We added an addendum, we added a buyer counter number 2, we added the hazard booklet, we added the signature page for that, we added a Los Angeles local area, square footage advisory, and the trust advisory. So now we have this template, but again, it's personalized in the documents that we are going to use, but it's still not personal to us as individuals. If you go into the cover sheet, you're not going to fill in a buyer name or a seller name because those are specific to a transaction. Same with the property information, that's specific to a transaction. But what if you always ask for the same escrow company? Buyer broker information. When I put this stuff in here, I'm clicking the buttons probably like you do, Liz, on every single transaction. Oh, I have a question. When I start typing this, if this system is smart enough to know that I'm a California realtor, why is it giving this? This is kind of a not as terrible as some of the examples. Why does it give me options of like Georgia and New York, and it doesn't show me the address that's in California? The auto-populate feature in this is challenging. I promised I wasn't going to complain about zip forms, but apparently I lied. Yeah, Georgia, New Hampshire, Florida. No, I think it's the one in California. So I'll auto-populate my email address and the buyer agent name, which is always the same. Every single offer I write, I always use the same name. I always use the same phone number. Seller's broker, no, because that's different per transaction. Title.
Question, David.
Yeah.
If we put in our name in both places, just so that in case we're ever what we are at the time, then couldn't we just delete the other in the actual
Yes, anything you put in a template, you can delete in a transaction.
so that's why I put mine in both.
How often do you double end a transaction?
Especially on
I'm sorry?
leases. Especially on leases.
So so your lease template should have it in both. For me, I double end a transaction about 5% of the time. So for me on a purchase transaction, I don't want to delete it 95%. I'd rather add it 5%, just for simplicity, just to keep it easy. Okay, so we added that stuff on the cover page. Some of these documents, there's no reason for you to go into affiliated business as an example because the only thing, oh, I'm sorry, I just lied. No, you do want to go into the affiliated business. You always want this to say BHHS, California Properties. Or
I usually put the
Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, California Properties. or whatever you use as the abbreviation for a company. What were you going to say, Liz?
I usually put the client's name in. Like if it's the one for the buyer
I'm backwards. You're right.
or the seller.
Sorry. The 2 is left blank because that's the buyer's name. I was thinking of the from line. So do you guys know why there's a from line on this affiliated business disclosure statement? I didn't know for a long time. Because it's used by Berkshire Hathaway Home Services California Properties. It's used by Home Services Lending. It's used by Home Services. I think it's used by Pickford Escrow. It's used by all of the companies here. The insurance company. So the service provider. So you fill in the name of who you are.
So I have a question on this form.
Okay.
Because we were at a listing and I didn't even know how to answer this. Where it says service provider Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, it says the charge 7% of the sales price and up to $1,000 unless otherwise negotiated.
Yes.
What does that mean?
That means when you're charging 6% and charging a $700 flat fee, you're explaining I'm giving you a discount. So this is a disclosure.
The 7% of the sales price up to $1,000.
And up to $1,000.
So basically, it's saying that it would be a 7% listing, technically,
This is a disclosure.
right?
Because it's a disclosure, we're required by law to disclose what the maximum price can be.
The maximum commission,
Yes,
so to speak.
for any of these charges.
Okay, I didn't.
Yeah, just like loan origination. If you find a lender who's charging you $1,945 to originate the loan, you should probably find a different lender, maybe. If you have somebody charging you 4 points right now, the interest rate better be like 3.0, right? So this is a disclosure saying that the amount's not going to be any higher. So if I tried to take an 8% listing and you sign this disclosure, you could say, well, no, the cap is 7.
That's super confusing to the buyer or seller.
Actually, it depends on how you sell it. I hear what you're saying, but and I've had people bring that up before, and I explained to them that's because I'm offering you a discount. That's the maximum our company charges, but don't worry,
Okay,
I'm not charging that.
good. That's awesome.
Okay. So the date and the property and the 2 line are left blank on this one. I'm glad I clicked on that because I forgot that. Anything to add in wire fraud? Specific to a template? No. So here's where we can get pretty in-depth in the offer form and save a lot of time. So number 1, it's a buyer, right? So we can check those boxes. Look, my information auto-populated on the offer. Did everybody know that happens when you put it on the cover sheet?
Yep.
Okay, great. On the first page of the offer, I'm going to check the boxes that says the listing broker is representing the seller and I'm representing the buyer exclusively. Because again, for me, 95% of the time that's true. If it's not, I can change it in the transaction. As we go through this offer, if there's anything that you do most of the time, that's where you want to check the information. I don't change initial deposit. I leave this as a default. If you change it, make your changes on the template. If 80% of the offers you write are all cash offers, go ahead and check that box. It's not my world. But I always have the buyer include the verification of down payment and a letter from a lender. So I'm checking the boxes on the template. I typically don't change contingency periods, but if you're in a market where you're always shortening contingency periods, go ahead and change them. I like disclosure source for the NHD report. If you want to say disclosure source and you want to avoid a counter, you can write or seller's choice. Do you guys always ask the seller to provide a termite report?
No.
Okay. Yes, no.
No.
See, that's why we're doing this template. So that you can make it personal to yourself. If you always ask for it. I want to share something. So actually, what I've done is I like to use a company that I know. This is something I started doing. Oops, sorry, I did that wrong. So I was kind of beaten into submission for the termite conversation because I always wanted to leave it out and just negotiate it with repairs. And the market that I work in, it just hasn't worked. Every offer I get has termite. It's just gotten to the point where I've been beaten into submission the way that we did it 5 years ago. So the way I do it is I have a termite company that will do a free inspection report. So the buyer will provide the report prepared by International because they're not going to charge anything for it. And then down here, I say, seller to provide clearance. I should go in and see exactly what the verbiage is. I have verbiage that I use that says seller to provide termite clearance as per (7A2) for paragraph 7.
After what?
A.
782?
So what I do is I say seller to pay for the termite clearance, spelled incorrectly, based upon this report up here. Again, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too crazy into the contract. Stacy teaches the contract class. I'm teaching more of a templates class, so. But if there's something that you do with termite on every offer, put it in the template. Checking boxes for the seller to pay for the minimum, the cost of compliance, smokes and straps, stuff like that. You know, all that stuff. Home warranty, $530. First American. Where is it? I write buyer's choice of coverage. Then I don't have to worry about not checking a box and having the listing agent come back and say, oh, we're not going to pay for the upgrade.
Is it possible to put in there the 1.5, whatever the cost is, and then say like the Eagle Premier plan?
Yes. Yeah, you can write anything you want. You could say Eagle Premier. Sure. For me, I like buyer's choice of coverage because sometimes I'll sell a house that doesn't have air conditioning. And believe it or not, I had an agent, this came out when they added this paragraph to the contract and it had specific things. I had an agent say that he wasn't going to pay for the home warranty up to the cap because the box for the air conditioner wasn't checked. And you don't have to pay for it if they don't check the box for air conditioning. Which to me is, I mean, picking a fight over pennies, that's ridiculous. So again, if I just put this in my template, if you want to pick Eagle Premier, go ahead and pick Eagle Premier. If there's no AC, but they want to do I don't know, they want to add something instead, then you can, and they can't fight with you. Anything else in the contract that you guys always put in?
Those best for possession.
Oh, for possession?
Yeah, if it's seller occupied, I usually try to give them 3 days.
Okay, cool. So,
Just be nice.
yeah. So right here, you check the box. Seller has the right to remain in possession. And you add the SIP. Let's see. And you say no later than 3 days right here.
Yes.
Everybody follow what I'm talking about?
Which part is it? 9?
Paragraph
Okay.
9, closing of possession. So if the seller occupies the property, it's customary in this area for the seller to get to remain in the house for 3 days. If you do that, make sure that you always get the seller in possession form signed, because you're getting into landlord-tenant relationships. Anything else you guys do on every offer? No?
Buyer inspection. I don't know if we do.
I'm sorry?
Where, like,
Do you,
buyer-
okay, yeah, I see that sometimes up here, that you'll put buyer shall pay for physical inspection.
Yes.
You can add that. And then I don't know if you put the company or you let them pick, or
Well, it's the buyer's choice, really, so.
so you don't have to put who it's prepared by, I guess, right? Anything else?
Clue report.
Clue report. That's okay. That's an interesting one because now the only person who can get it is the seller.
Right, they're so hard to get.
So you need to put other right here under inspections. You need to write clue. Used to be that companies could get the clue report. Now the seller's the only person that can get it. I haven't dealt with clue reports in years.
One time I didn't ask for it and it was the time that I needed to have it.
Ah,
Now I ask.
okay. So I've noticed that my organizing isn't saving. So I'm going to move. I'm going back to get my local areas next to each other. Putting stuff in order. Okay, done. All right, so now that you have a buyer template, everybody caught up as far as we are? Okay, so I'm going to exit all the way out. I'm going to go to transactions, new transaction. You following where I am? Buyer, Main Street, USA. Residential.
When do you hit apply template?
Actually, if you look, remember I told you when I set that up that I told you I wondered what was going to happen because I already have one? You realize all I did when I clicked, here I'm going to start all over again to show you how simple this is. From transactions, click new, click purchase, you name it, you click residential, and it automatically is now applying 2 templates for me because I have 2 templates that are automatically, it's done.
Oh, automatically after the first one?
Because remember we checked the box that say automatically apply to new purchases?
Mhm.
Follow?
Yeah.
I'm going to go back though because I don't want to confuse myself, so I'm going to turn this one off. Let's see. I'm going to say do not apply. The template that I have, I just unapplied that. So now when I go to transactions and I do a new transaction, a new purchase on Main Street, USA, done. Now I save it. Watch how cool this is. Takes me to summary, which I never used. Does anybody use summary in this? I wish it would just go to documents. Look, I open the offer, and it's filled in. So now, you go to the cover sheet, and you add in the specifics, the buyer's name, the property address, all that stuff. And then, Danny, when you go and you review it, you don't have to worry about checking boxes to ask for the clue report. You don't have to ask for all the things that we put in the template. They're automatically there. All you have to do is go in and say, oh, it's vacant. We don't need seller in possession. Just pull it out. I don't have to add my information because, look, it's already there. I don't have to ask for Pickford and California title because they're already there.
Dave, one question.
Mm-hmm.
I never asked for local, businesses, whatever, affiliate. Judy always does that.
I'm sorry, you never asked for what?
For affiliates and disclosure and all that, I never had the buyer sign it because
It should be signed when the offer gets signed. The wire fraud, the affiliated business. When I get it, so just so that you know, when I when I write an offer, these 3 forms, and actually for me, the local area too, because when I send an offer, if it's Coldwell Banker, they don't have my local area. Well, why should I send it to them later? Why not send them everything that I need signed now?
Okay. And does it really to be 2 of them?
2 of what?
The one with the forms and one from Berkshire Hathaway.
Oh, the wire fraud?
The local area. Isn't that true?
Well, the reason I have 2 is because sometimes I sell properties in Orange County and sometimes I sell in Los Angeles.
I see.
So I'll use one or the other.
All right. I see that.
But when I get an offer signed, I get why not? I mean, we're talking about like an extra 3 pages. Then the buyer's signing them right now. They're going with the offer. If the seller's sitting down to do disclosures, isn't it nice for the listing agent to be able to take your disclosures with their disclosures, get them all filled out, signed at once, so then when they send them back, you're done. The sooner you're done, the better. If you wait until the transaction's open and then you give the file to Judy and then Judy has to create all these documents, get the buyer signed, then you send them to the seller. If there's any kind of a problem or a challenge, sometimes you don't get them signed till the end.
So Dave, before that you did the wire fraud, affiliated business, local area, putting by Orange County. Before that you did.
Affiliated business, wire fraud, the RPA, and the local area. And those are the documents that go out in a DocuSign envelope to get signed all at once. And then as I'm working through the transaction, all these other forms are just automatically there. I'm going to have a request for repair. I don't have to go into the forms and bring it over. It's automatic.
Do you ever recommend doing a separate one just for the first batch and then another template for the last batch?
I use so never for a buyer. I've never done that, but I did that for a seller, and then I realized it was an extra step because it's so if they're in order, then I don't have to use them all. So I don't necessarily have to have different templates, and especially when it auto applies a template, it doesn't give me an option for like stage 1 listing, stage 2 listing. So if I just let it apply everything and I only use half of it, then I only use half of it. That's what I found. And then with a property, if it's moving through a transaction, if it's stage 1, I don't want to have a new template for stage 2. I'd rather just have the information that I already put in there. Any questions about the buyer template? Anybody learn anything that they're going to apply?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. So now I think the next one, in my opinion, is probably more important. And for me, especially with the new regulations that the office has, that we have to have this list, this checklist. Everybody knows if you haven't experienced it, it's not comfortable. You take a listing, you submit it to Jennifer. Jennifer sends back, oh, I need X, Y, and Z. Then you sell it, and your TC's calling you up saying, well, I can't put anything in because Jennifer didn't put it in, or it's not far enough along to be converted to a transaction, and you're still missing documents. If you haven't experienced that, I hope you don't have to. It's not fun. So rather than trying to figure out every single time what you need, if you have a template, it does it automatically. So let's make a template. So I'm back in templates, right? New template. Which button do I click? What's the template name?
Main Street.
No, that's the transaction.
Oh, the seller's name.
No, that's a transaction. This is a template. What do you want to call the template?
Listing.
Money. You can call it money in the bank because it's an Orange County listing.
I like that.
New car, new shoes, Liz.
You should.
New shoes. Okay, we'll call it new shoes.
That sounds great too.
Which template did you choose?
So I chose listing. I
Is
said
listing?
new template,
Go back.
and it's a listing, and it's residential, right? It's always residential. And then I think you want to apply it to every transaction, right?
Yeah.
I'm not, because I already have a listing template that gets applied to transactions. And I'll show you that one if you want to see it. So we have this new template. Oops, look what I did. I didn't apply a template to it. So now it's just blank.
If you choose the second button or the third, it automatically applies.
So you don't want to ever, I don't think you ever want to choose the third button. I can't imagine that the third button would ever apply. The third button says apply to every transaction. Doesn't differentiate between a listing and a buyer. So if you fill in your information as a listing broker and you say every transaction, then when you start as a buyer, it's putting it in the wrong place. So what do I do now? I just created this transaction and I forgot to apply the company template.
Go back.
How about this little button right here? Apply template. Do you know that was there? If you're in a transaction, if you have a transaction right now already created, you can apply a template to it. So let's go and apply. Where's the list? Let's see, Los Angeles, Orange County. Nice that they put them in alphabetical order, huh? Los Angeles, Malibu, San Fernando, Ventura, Santa Barbara. Oh, there's Orange County. So these are all the things that the company thought were important for you to have. Again, first thing I want to do is take the cover sheet.
So by selecting that one, we no longer have to go into the initial drop down where you're usually in car, and now we switch it over to EHHS and look for their forms. So if we're choosing this template, it's automatically in there all the EHHS.
Only the forms that whoever created this template put in there. The only forms in this listing template are the ones that I don't know if Sam did it. I don't know who created these templates. But remember, it's a template for 3,500 agents.
And if there are new forms, they're not going to be.
Right. When something changes, I want my personal templates. I want my information. I want it to flow in a way that I can read it and understand it, that makes sense to me. I don't care if everybody else. I don't care what works for anybody else. So I'm going to create a template, and then as forms change, get updated, I'm editing my own template.
I have two questions. One is, I keep trying to save this and it's not saving. Because it says save as a PDF. That's the only save I see. There used to be just a save.
Okay. When I modify something, so I'm in a template right now. Let me finish organizing. It didn't save. Okay.
That's what I'm dealing
Well, I said I wasn't going to complain about zip forms. I hate this program.
Yeah, me
I've
too.
always hated this program.
Yeah, me too. Exactly.
I hated it from the day it started. The people that created this and wrote the code for it don't know anything about real estate. They only know about code.
I
There,
agree.
I said it.
I agree. That's
It's terrible in so many ways. Why can't I log out of the program from where I am? I have to go to some special page to be able. It's crazy. I digress.
Can I answer that question? So when you go up and come down again, it shows you, just on the very first one, you can save. Just when you add something, it shows save PDF here, but at the very, very first one, it is save. That you can save it.
Yeah, but I don't see a save.
There's no save. Well, first of
There
all,
is.
did you see where that just showed up? Where it says saved at the top?
Yeah.
So when I'm here, if I do something, if I do anything, if I put in a buyer's name, and I click the back button,
Mm-hmm.
it saves.
Okay.
You don't have to click save.
How come when I went back and I came back, it all shifted back with the cover down?
Are you talking about organized?
Yeah.
Because I hate this program. Because the people that write this program are terrible.
Yeah, me too. Mine is
And
the
it's
same
just
too.
it's a necessary evil.
Yeah.
Because they have a monopoly and it's never going to change. So we have to accept it. So try twice. Try it again. It worked for. See, it didn't even. Now it moved it up in the general direction, but it didn't leave it where I saved it.
Well, at least I don't feel so stupid.
So when it comes to organizing the documents, I've found that that's really glitchy. It doesn't want to save them where they are. So don't fret about that. That's just how it goes.
Okay, my second question was, I see this has square footage in it, and we were talking about it also going in the buyer's side. We don't need it in the buyer's if we're gonna have it in the seller's, right?
Are you representing both sides of the transaction?
No, but you were saying in the buyer's, we should have the square footage in that template, and isn't it usually just in the listing side? Or
If we're not if Coldwell Banker is a listing agent, they're not going to create the buyer square footage addendum. If it's not in our buyer template, then you're going to have to go get it. So put it in the template, and then you don't have to go get it. Remember, you're not going to apply a listing template and a buyer template to the same transaction. It's either or. That's why we have two. So let's see what time is it. In the interest of time, rather than modify this template that we just started, which is a company template, if it's okay with you, I'm going to show you the template that I have for listings.
Yeah.
Okay. So my listing template is called listing. And this is the order that works for me. And again, it doesn't matter. Don't copy it. Figure out what works best for you. But in the cover sheet, same thing we did on the buyer side, only it's on the listing side. I've got my information under seller's broker. I don't have title and escrow because why does it matter in a listing side? Title and escrow is determined on the offer, right? But these are the forms that I get signed. Mary Lou, this might answer your question. When I go, by the way, I never print cover. I just use it to put the information in. I take the listing agreement. I take the arbitration agreement. 99% of the time, sellers exclude the listing from the MLS for a certain period of time. So it's automatically in there. The square footage advisory is something that our company requires at the beginning of the transaction now. That's why it's that far up in the process. Affiliated business disclosure. Those are the forms. What did I miss?
Arbitration on this.
Arbitration's right here.
Okay.
Did I miss anything on Ruta's cheat sheet about the required listing? Who's got that form? It's on my desk. If you want to hand it to me, it should be in that pile right there.
Now they want the MLS for now. Once you get
Here, I'll
that.
just use this one. Let's see. I think it's. Oh, I'm sorry. Listing checklist. AD, seller agency to sell the.
Disclosure.
It's in the listing agreement.
Right.
Yeah.
Affiliated business.
It's there.
It's right there. Wire fraud.
It's there.
It's here. It should. Oh, let's see. It should be up there. Wire fraud should be somewhere up here. What's next on the list? PRBS.
What is pure?
Possible representation of more than one buyer or seller. It's in the listing
It is in the
agreement.
listing. Yeah.
Arbitration agreement.
Yeah.
It's up there. Square footage advisory. It's right there. So for me, excluding the cover sheet, the first 6 documents are the required documents for taking a listing.
When you create your own like that, do you find that if you know the first 6 that you want up there, if you pull them up first, they're going to stay there since that organization doesn't always fit?
Yes, what I've found is that once it saves, it will remain saved. They don't move around once they've figured out where you want them to be. And they'll show up in a transaction in this order. That's part of the template process is this order. When I create a new transaction, that's what I'm going to see.
Because you pulled it that way.
Because I saved it that way as the template. And then, so moving down, by the way, when I take a listing, 9 times out of 10, I don't stop there. I know some agents, they want to get the listing signed and leave. For me, I want everything signed that I'm going to need. I want to get as far through the process as I can at that time. So we're going to also fill out the local area disclosure, either the Los Angeles County or the Orange County, the SBSA, the WCMD, the MCA, lead-based paint, only if applicable, because if it's new, I don't need it. TDS, SPQ, homeowner's guide, hazard report. That's where I stop at a listing appointment. Then the AVID, contingency removal, qualified substitute. I've got a seller response to buyer's request right here. I've got 1, 2 counteroffers. I've got 3 multiple counteroffers. The booklet, verification, and property condition. So I know that when I get a listing, the buyer's going to have a request and we're going to respond to it. So I already have the form in there. Any questions so far?
David, the seller's instruction to exclude listing.
Mm-hmm.
There's one from NAR and then one for cars. Should we use both or?
I don't know about one from NAR. I know about one from CAR, and I know about one from our CRMLS.
The two, should we use the two?
The answer is yes. We should use the 2. I have not added. I think there's a way for me to add. Let me see if I can add a document to a template that's not already. I know. Oh, here it is. If I add a document, then I go. Now the question is, can I find that document? There it is. Does everybody know what Lisa's asking about? It's in there now. Down here. I'll organize it and move it up where it belongs. Right next to that. Seller exclusion. See if it takes. Oh, took that time.
David, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have a listing coming up and I was going to put it under those 2 forms, but when we were in our last meeting, I was talking to someone, they said you can put it on hold instead simultaneously,
Mm-hmm.
and it won't collect days on market as well. And that
Right.
way you can market it.
Right.
Is that correct? Just leave days on market when you put it
It's my understanding.
Say that again, David.
You can put a property on hold and it won't accumulate the days on market. You can list it the day you get it signed and then just change the status to hold. I'm not a big fan of that because it's going to automatically revert back
revert back.
to active. You can only put it on hold for a certain period of time, and
You can keep doing it.
yeah. But
But yeah,
if
you
I'm
can keep doing
if I'm
this.
out here between here and Avalon and it goes back to active, and all of a sudden people see it, then
But do you mean that in lieu of an SELM? Is that what you're
I
saying?
think that was her question, her
Well, you
suggestion.
don't want to use the SELM. You wanted to do
Well,
that.
because you can't market it at all. If it's in the SCLM, it says you cannot communicate that you have that property.
It depends on your own business practices. I have 2 listings signed right now that are under SCLM, and I'm not marketing them because they're not ready to be marketed.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Because one seller said, I'm not moving until my kids are done with their baseball in July.
Well, I have
So,
a vacant property.
if you wanna
And
market it-
some work, but there's a couple other homes for sale right across the street, and we have to we're doing a repipe on it, and so it's gonna go on the market in a couple weeks, but it's just like, I'd like to collect to see if, talk about it, if somebody's.
Then why
interested in the neighborhood.
don't you start marketing it?
Because I don't have the listing signed yet.
Oh,
I have all-
then you don't have any. Then you.
Yeah, I do kind of.
No.
No.
No. It's black and white.
But
This is black and white. If you don't have a listing sign,
Well, we're
and
signing it. I'm just trying to decide which way to do it. Because I have all the keys, she's out of state, and I'm doing all the,
don't overcomplicate it. My suggestion in this business is have a system,
okay.
a way that you do it all the time. And if you want to make an exception to the system, that's fine. But you have to start by saying, what's your system? My system is that I get the listing sign right now.
Yeah,
Whenever right now is. Like right now.
Well, we're gonna do that, like right now.
But it has, but
I'm the one that's driving because of which way to do it.
so I'm just telling you how I do it.
Always get it signed.
So my business model is you get it signed right now.
Right.
Okay.
And when they say I'm doing a repipe, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing whatever it is, my business model is they sign an SCLM and I don't market it until they give me the authority to market it. So I'm not lying when I'm saying that you've instructed me not to market it. I don't tell anybody about it. If somebody asks me about it, I can say, yeah, I know about it, but I'm not knocking doors in the neighborhood. I'm not playing the coming soon game. If you want to play the coming soon game, then fill out the paperwork accordingly and explain to the seller that, yeah, we can do that. But when I put it on the MLS, they're going to assume that we've been marketing it because, by the way, I am marketing it. So would you like me to wait until we do hit it everything at once, like a major campaign where everything happens at once? It goes in the MLS, it goes on 300 websites, I do door knocking, I do public open house, we do broker tour, we do everything at once? Or do you kind of want me to sort of piecemeal it out?
Okay.
Whatever you want to do is fine.
Not only that, she can't upload the listing and put it in hold if it hasn't been signed.
Right, I think she knows
It
that.
won't even go in.
No, that wasn't her
We
question.
were just talking about her and I, because she was going, well, can you tell people about it and stuff like that. And I go, I can't if it's in the SELM.
Yeah. Do you want me to do piecemeal, or do you want me to start it out with a bang?
Okay, can I ask you one other question? If you do the SELM.
Is it related to the template? Because I want to stay on track here. Is it related to the class?
Okay, ask me.
Ask me after. Okay, thank you. So in this listing template, if there's anything that I do in a listing agreement, I can put it here. If I charge the $750 listing terms, you put it right there. I'm sorry, down here. 6% and $750 for flat commission. You fill in the 180 days. You fill in all that stuff, okay? Oops. There's the listing template for me is a lot more about putting my information on the cover sheet and a couple things on the listing agreement. I really wish, and I've called Zip Forms to ask, is there a box I can check so that every time I open one of these disclosures, it'll put the same date on the form? Because wouldn't it be cool that in a transaction I didn't have to go and put the date on? Fortunately, date is not on the new forms, which I'm really excited about, but the old forms you have to go in and drag a date. You used to have to do it like 12 times. Now it's only 5. I asked that question. They said no. So this is my listing template. Before I show you how it applies, any questions? Okay. So if I go,
I do have.
yeah.
When in that drop down where it says select template, it's saying personal listing template.
Mhm.
Is that what you're choosing? Personal?
I think I know what you're referring to, but I'm not sure what. Wait a minute. I think I know that it's there, but I don't. Template details. Yeah. I mean, I don't choose it, so I guess it is automatically a personal template, which makes sense
Yeah, it's by default.
because
it's
this is
personal.
about you. This is about your whatever's right for you. So yeah, that makes sense.
But you're choosing the Orange County Berkshire Hathaway.
Say that again.
The other options would be global Orange County
I don't understand your question.
Instead of choosing personal that you're not recommending, what are you choosing?
No, I am. When I'm creating a template, I do want it to be personal. I am suggesting it be personal. Yeah, you do want it, the scope, you do want it to be a personal template.
Why would you choose global?
I have no idea. Maybe because you're Sam Guillen and you want it to, you're creating something for everybody, but I'm not sure. So if I go to a transaction and I start a new transaction and I click the listing button and I call it Main Street. By the way, listings, I always do the property street name. Buyers, I always do the buyer's last name. That's just a habit I have. Because if you use the buyer's last name and if they write 5 offers, I don't have to change the name of the template, and then it makes sense. And then if I'm looking at my list, it's kind of easy to see if it's a street name, like Kennebec, it's a listing. If it's more, it's a buyer. So once I start a transaction, a listing transaction, and I name it and I click residential, it automatically, now notice this didn't apply the BHHS template, this applied my template that I call listing. It didn't apply new shoes because I didn't tell it to. When I save it, it opens to summary for some odd reason. I don't know what summary is for. And then this is all the stuff. And there's the exclusion form, Lisa, that I just added automatically. And then go to the cover sheet, put in the property, seller's information, property information, and then you're saving stuff specific to the transaction. Got it? Now you asked a question about why is it saving as a PDF?
Yeah, I thought before it just said save, and I keep hitting save, but that's when I'm doing the transaction. So any other.
So now that I'm in a transaction, I'll show you, and this is off topic of template, but if there's still stuff that you're learning, it's worth talking about. So when you're working in a transaction, how do you typically get a listing signed? Do you typically meet them face-to-face with a pen at their dining room table?
No.
DocuSign. So when you DocuSign, yeah, e-sign. E-sign,
Yeah.
Digital Ink or DocuSign. So to do that, you guys probably already know this, but you click e-sign, and then you click new, and then you select the forms that you want them to sign, right? And then you send it. Now, have you run into any problems getting the square footage disclosure completed? when you
Yeah,
send it
I
down
had
to them?
arbitration problem that you have to choose the sellers, and nobody could answer me. Not James, not Mina, not no one.
What was your
Doesn't answer.
question?
My question was just it didn't give me a chance, just me having anything. I mean, that's why it was asking. I mean, doing any task, it was keep telling me just seller or agent should have at least minimum one task to do. That mean initial or
Right.
sign it, do something, which you can just when you go. I mean, if you go right now, I will tell you where you can choose from the top. That one time you have to choose your seller, one time you have to choose your own name, just to give you the chance of just putting your initial, your signature, your date.
Okay. Do you use DocuSign or Digital Ink?
No digital ink. Zip
Use
code.
Digital Ink.
No, and
Okay.
I hate it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know Digital Ink.
Yeah.
I don't like Digital Ink. I think you get what you pay for. And Digital Ink is free.
Yeah.
What you do?
We are gonna get it. whenever
I
this
pay
is
like
sold too.
$100 or whatever it is for DocuSign.
Yeah.
And it's, oh gosh, it's so worth it.
It's really worth, yeah.
When you chose
Someone?
hmm
it automatically go to your DocuSign after that based on the fact that that's what you use?
It does, and I'll show you. So I'll select these are the forms. By the way, oh my gosh, I don't remember the last time I got a listing signed by Digital Ink. Or I'm sorry, I just said that. I don't remember the last time I did electronic signatures for a listing agreement.
Really?
I did a lease listing because he's in Georgia, but for a sale,
Oh.
I sit down at the table with them because they're going to fill out the disclosures too. Now you can send. I did successfully. I had a super techie guy fill out the SPQ and the TDS through DocuSign. He transposed some answers, but other than that, it worked. It's very difficult. Because you're checking boxes electronically and filling in blanks, and you have to think like a computer to make it work. I can't imagine most people filling out a TDS and an SPQ in DocuSign. So if they're not doing it in DocuSign, where are they doing it? How do you guys deliver those documents to a seller?
PDF, email it.
Okay, and then they print them out and fill them out, and then they scan them back to you.
No. Just through e-sign. Just I emailed them just the way that you are doing right now. Close it, and they have email addresses. I put to their email. They got it like DocuSign. They got it.
So you've had sellers complete the TDS and the SPQ in DocuSign, and you got them back correct?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Like I said,
yeah,
that happened once.
Jump, but yeah.
That happened to me once. So.
You can also say that to a folder in that, you know, when they come back, when she was asking, instead of just come back to DocuSign, you can tell it which folder in your documents you want it to go to, make a folder for the signed documents to come back.
You're talking about in zip forms or on your computer.
I'm talking about on your computer, when you go do this, it'll say, where do you want to save it at?
I'm in DocuSign. I'm in electronic signature right now.
That's what I'm talking
Okay, so if I say close, it's going to open up this window, and it's going to say the signing services DocuSign. Here's the forms. Click next. You have to add people.
Yeah.
Close. Next again. Oh, it won't let me go because I didn't fill in all the information. But in this, there's no reason for you to. I mean, it will save a folder, but I don't know why you would want it.
wait, go back.
Okay, what did I do? Here.
Okay, see that D? Okay, close. Okay, see the D documents there?
Right here?
Select a document.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can, to include, okay, is that what you hit?
Yeah.
Okay, it's not hard to set up here. Okay, now close that. There's a place where you, up here it says, return folder. Choose a, oh, there it is, above it. Choose a folder for, so I hit that and I pick I have a folder already.
In DocuSign.
on-
I'm sorry, in zip forms.
In zip forms for that, so the signed ones go back to that and they also go back to DocuSign.
Oh, interesting. That's,
Okay.
yeah, so
That way I know which ones have been signed.
it, which ones have been signed? So the folder's not, so they either sign them all and finish.
And everything they finish will come back into the folder I assigned.
That's interesting. Mine's a little bit different. I have folders. I have a Dropbox, and I put stuff in here, and I manage the documents when they come emailed back to me. But for example, this is a listing that I have. The listing signed. I've got state disclosures. Look, when I get an offer on this property that's not even on the market yet, they're already signed by the seller, and I just email this to the buyer's agent when I can send them out when I get the counter.
Well, that's what that folder is. You can just take all the signed ones from there that you
Yeah.
You can, same thing,
Okay.
but it's just, it organizes it.
Interesting.
In your, folders, so you're not picking the ones that have been signed in the group.
Yeah. So that's interesting because it is a cloud. I started using Dropbox before this came, but that's a good thing to note that I have seen folders, like for example, in transactions, if I go into,
Just create one.
let me see if I've got one that I actually sent stuff out of. So here's a transaction that I did send stuff out of. If I go to eSign, it's got this. I don't know what this is because I never really go in and look. I wonder if these are signed.
Yeah, mine is look like this,
It tells you
and I don't
on
make any folder like.
Oh, it says in progress.
I mean, you
Yeah,
can
that
tell,
means it
it's
hasn't been
nice
signed.
No, but that's
Mine
weird.
never
This one should have been.
folder and name it,
Hmm.
signed documents for that.
But in
transaction.
e-sign, it never comes back unless they're all signed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's we are talking about that part. And we are talking about the part that
And
is
what's
signed
interesting
and
is here's a document that this is done. Yeah, again, so that's not true. That's not in progress because that's a form that she signed. It says it's in progress, and I have no idea why. Because
when it says
does
in
anybody
progress,
know where to
yeah.
see?
When it says it is in progress, that means somebody just signed and the other one doesn't sign.
Right.
But they're both
Yeah.
signed because, and I'll give you
It
an
is
example.
impossible. Otherwise, it should show.
This is a
just
form that's
exactly.
in that. Here's a form in that folder that's signed by me and the buyer. It's
Where's
completed. Buyer's here.
Okay.
Here's my signature. So that's a completed document. The folder's been completed, and Zip Forms thinks it's in progress.
So that's weird.
Again, I don't like this.
It cannot happen. So it is impossible.
Okay. So that's how you do templates.
That's good.
Well,
Thank
that's
you.
good.
We need more of this. It was really
Thanks
good.
for coming.
Thank you.